Everyone, welcome back to the channel. I wanted to make this video to share with you how I'm using Logseq to manage my digital life. In Logseq, everything starts at the journal level. So every day that you open up Logseq, you are presented with a new page, and that new page has the date. So as the recording, or as the time of this recording, it's March 25th, 2022. Tomorrow, when I open Logseq, I will have an automatically generated new page of March 26th, 2022. And that keeps everything nice and clean because you get a blank slate every time that you open up the program and there's a new day, and it forces you to move things along, very much like a physical journal would. You have one page per day or a spread per day, and once the day is done, you get a new one and you have to move things over, and that's what I found to be a tremendous benefit of Logseq is this journal level entry, because you get a clean slate and it forces you to kind of reorient yourself in your planner, and then to be able to build knowledge structures outside the daily note. So how I structure this note is I have three main sections, starting with the daily metrics. And this is heavily influenced from Newport's time block planner, which is a physical planner. I've just taken a lot of those concepts and moved them into the Logseq. I did a previous video where I did that with Obsidian. And then in this video, I'll talk about how I've expanded on that, and it's kind of expanded into consuming some of the ideas behind Ryder Carroll's bullet journal. But anyway, it starts with the daily metrics. So that's an idea that is in Newport's time blocker. So metrics. If you see there, I did this two pound signs or hashtags, and that's what creates an H2. There are also slash commands you can use to call out these different things. This is a flavor of Markdown. So all this in here is Markdown, where you can use the hashtags for headings, or you can use asterisks for bold and underlines for italics and stuff like that, just to give it some more flair. Something that I'm not capable of emulating in a physical version because my handwriting is awful. But inside the daily metrics, I have three important metrics that I have. I want to write for 1 hour a day, and I want to learn Go. So Go is a programming language that I've been learning for a number of months now, and I want to do that for 30 minutes. So in Newport's time blocker, he says that we should, or he suggests that you track some of the most important things, and one of the easier ways to do that is just to measure the time that you spend in the activities that you want to engage in. And so for me, that's writing, improving my skills as a writer. That usually happens right away in the morning as I work on manuscripts and so forth like that. And then throughout the day, I try to block out at least 30 minutes for learning this programming language so that I can become more competent and be better at my job, which is to write about that particular language with cloud services. Now, particularly Azure. The next one that I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm always kind of growing and keeping this habit of reading alive. So becoming a reader instead of someone who reads, and building that as part of my identity. And so I have another daily metric of read 25 pages. And that is a tip that came from Farnham Street, or fs.blog, on how to become a reader and how to read quicker and more books. So if you just read 25 pages a day, I think that's close to 10,000 pages a year, or 9-something thousand, which is, I think, War and Peace 6 or 7 times. And so if you could just get 25 pages a day, I usually finish a book in about 10 days or a little over a week. And so that's a good velocity for me to kind of cruise through a lot of books and chip away at my ever-growing reading list. Now, another thing that you can do in Logseq is you can create checkboxes. So if I do /to-do, it's going to put a nice checkbox in front of that. So that way I can immediately come in every morning and I get this, and I can see that I need to plan out for my hour, I need to plan for my learning, and it's a reminder to be like, start to read some pages whenever you have some time. I found the pages to be more useful for reading because I tend to read just sprinkled throughout the day where I have moments. To read, I don't really dedicate a specific block to read for 25 minutes. I do try to read at night for a good chunk, but that doesn't always happen. So reading is kind of a guessing game for me, and tracking the time is kind of annoying, where it's a lot easier when I'm at the computer writing and learning to code things. That's much easier to track. So the pages work well for tracking that. You can come up with your own metrics or whichever thing that you're learning. Mine are very focused around refining skills or growing in some capacity. So maybe practice guitar would be a good one. That's been on my list for a long time. The next section to move on, though, is called what I call an engineer's book. It's an idea that I got from the Pragmatic Programmer. the 20th anniversary edition. And really the idea that they stumbled upon the idea following electrical and mechanical engineers around. They would always kind of keep these little notebooks with them and they would write things down. And there was a little bit of a friendly competition to see who could have the most of them on their bookshelves in their offices. And I really like that idea because it's something that I've done prior to using all of these digital tools to manage my life. I did use the bullet journal for about 2 years and I loved it. And there's something kind of romantic about the notebook where you can kind of capture ideas, and it's always something that I've enjoyed doing. And now I have a digital version of this. So inside the engineer's book, I have 2 sections. In this model's Cal Newport's time blocker, I have notes and then I have tasks. Because as we go throughout the day, there's kind of 2 types of notes. We have things we need to do and things we want to remember. And I make the delineation here in these boxes so that way I can clearly separate them. So if I start to add a lot of to-dos, they're not kind of intermixed with my notes. It's a nice separation between things I need to act on and things I need to think about or maybe turned into action. They require a little bit more thought. So this might be update the task boards with current sprint, or updates current sprint, on task board, current sprint on the task boards. So, following some agile methodology, maybe you need to update your sprint report or you need to update your current sprint or think about that. That'd be a task that came up, maybe as an action item from a meeting. And then notes could be really any number of things that you just kind of want to remember. And I typically jot them down here. So that takes care of the engineer's daybook. The third and final part of my journal note is the time blocker grid portion of Cal Newport's time block planner. And so I do that by having just a heading here, another H2 called time blocker. And then I separate my day into the morning half and the afternoon half, which is then separated by my lunch. Not too groundbreaking there. So I just have morning as a bold heading here. And then I have lunch, just to remind me to eat. And then I have afternoon. So I try to follow the Makerverse Manager time. And that means that I use my morning for deep work. So my first 4 hours of the day, I'm pretty isolated. I really don't check Teams or any kind of tool or email or whatnot. I just try to get my most important work done in the morning. And then I leave the afternoons open for the manager time, which is a lot of collaboration. If I can sneak some deep work hours away from that, if I don't have too many meetings, I will. But I do leave the afternoon for busy work and for meetings and so forth. So what I typically do is I have this block. I do go into basic granularity with time. So I'll start my day at 8 a.m. So I'll have a block for that, and this is where I would put my my tasks. So instead of that, I'd probably put to do, task 1 or deep work session 1 would go here. And I typically, unless I have meetings or something, appointments, I don't go to half an hour increments unless I'm trying to get really fine grained with more shallower type tasks. So I'll do 9 a.m., 9 a.m., and then I'll have, deep work session 2. Through all my years of, embracing the philosophy of deep work, I have found that the maximum interval for me is around an hour to an hour and a half. And so I do like to have a visual representation that I should switch tasks, even if it's a continuation of the first deep work session of whatever I'm working on. I do put it here so that I'll take a step back. I'll probably go sit over my chair, read a couple pages, come back to work, or maybe I'll go for a walk outside. But having the 1 hour increment versus this kind of time block that bleeds into all 4 hours really helps me mentally to kind of remember to step away. So I'll do that, and then I'll have one for 10 a.m., and then, maybe this is some shallow task to wind down, because I found that if I jump straight out of a deep work session and I go straight down, I'm still kind of recovering a little bit. So I try to leave that last hour with some shallower tasks or some busier work, so that way it's an easier transition to lunch. And then I usually go to lunch around 11 a.m. and eat with my family because I work from home. And then the afternoon is kind of open. And I usually fill this out by referencing my Outlook calendar. So I've done a pretty good job of keeping my meetings in the afternoon. That's just kind of how it's worked with the company I'm working for. And I'll reference my calendar and I'll put the times in here. And then afterwards, I'll kind of sneak in some time where I can maybe do my 30 minutes of learning with Go or what have you. So, maybe at 2:30 there's team meeting or something like that. Team meeting. Yeah. And then I always have at 4 o'clock or 4:30, typically, I have my shutdown, and that's just another to-do. And really how I do that is to stage work for the next day, and I'll show you how I do that in a minute. So that's really the 3 sections of the journal, which very closely mimics the time block planner. Now I'll kind of go into the weekly, or the weekly note, or the planning the week ahead, as Cal Newport refers to it in his book, and then also where I've started to use some of the bullet journal tactics. So before we get into staging the work and seeing how we can transition from one to another, this would get really annoying if you had to do this every single day, and that's the point of a template. So I'm just going to grab this entire file, so all these different blocks, if I can, there we go, and then I'm going to create a new page. So I remember at the beginning I said that there are journal entry pages and there are pages. And so we can click down here a new page that isn't linked to the journal. We could create a page from in here, but maybe we don't want to link to this particular day. So we create a new page, and I will call it template. And then since one doesn't exist, I will create a new one, and then I can paste in that template, right, that we just created. But what I'll do is, instead of keeping or leaving this noise in here, I will just delete it. And even the empty lines will copy too. So if you like this distinction where I've already got an empty bullet underneath the notes and tasks, you can do that. Go ahead and update your daily metrics and so forth. And we'll leave a line there, and we'll leave this as a blank line, that is a blank line, and that is a blank line, and so forth. So how you create a template inside of Logseq is you need to create a bullet. So right now we can only create a template on each of these bullets individually. We need a higher level one. So I'm going to create a new H1 that will kind of be able to link all of them, called the time blocker. And then I'm going to use the shift key to put them underneath that. So you can see I'm moving the blocks underneath the H1 when I do that. Right now the root of this kind of hierarchy, block level hierarchy, and now by hitting tab I'm putting them underneath that. And the reason for that is so that way I can right click on the time blocker bullet, and I can create a template. So if I create a template, there is this option that says include parent in the template, and I'm going to say no, because I don't want time blocker, the H1, to be included in every one of my journal entries. So I'm just going to name the template time blocker and click submit. Now we have a template. So if we go back to the journal entry, how you use them manually is if you select all this, and we delete it, we can do /template, and then there's time blocker. We can click that, we've got our template. Now that's great and dandy, but that's still annoying to have to do that every single day. So what we can do instead is we can go to the settings and edit the config. And then right here, default template, we can put time blocker. And this is just the name that we gave it, and we gave it the name time blocker, so that's where that's going to go in the journals. So every time now a new journal entry opens up, it's going to grab that template and populate it from there, which is awesome. So that's how you set up the templates. I've gone a little bit further and actually made these morning sections, these hours, a template too, so that way my default one doesn't have any hours. So if I start later or earlier, or sometimes I know that there's this one task that's going to take me 3 hours, then I won't bother with all the times. But to start, I think having the individual times is great. And this is, automation is the biggest benefit of the digital version that we have here, so that we don't have to write these all by hand every time or every day. So that kind of wraps up the journal note. Now I want to talk about the week ahead. So in the time blocker, there is this, and in the bullet journal, there's this concept of a weekly review or a weekly page. And so we can create another page called the week ahead. And this is a way to get your head wrapped around all the tasks from a different angle, a higher abstraction of a week versus the day. So the journal is your daily, and the week note ahead, or the week ahead, is your weekly. And what I typically do here is I have a deadline deadlines entry, and this is something that I just came up on my own. Really an idea on my own, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, it's things to remind what needs to get done. So maybe the rough draft for X article is due, and then I can actually use the deadline command here to pick, like say it's due next Friday, and I'll just click submit. And it deleted my draft for some reason. But this is a good way for me to see a snapshot of the major things, the most, the WIGs, the wildly important goals for the week. I put them there. Next, what I'll do is I will have basically a heading for each of the days. And this is really, really cool. You'll like this. So Monday, we'll have a heading, and Tuesday, and I'm missing an S in Tuesday. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And don't worry, you only have to do this once because you'll just reuse this sheet every week. So if you type all this, don't worry about Friday. And I typically just track the work week. I don't see any need really to track the weekend because a lot of this I only use during the work day and work week. And the weekend I don't really check much stuff. So that's that. And what you would do here is under each of these is you would start to log them. So maybe you're reviewing your journal note and you've got some tasks that you don't need to be reminded until Wednesday. Or let's just play this out in a scenario so you can see it in action. So today is Friday, and we'll just say that I had pre-planned to record this video on Friday, which I did. And so if we just did date picker here, we can select a date. So we'll just say today's March 25th, 2022. And this was last Friday, I'm creating this plan, or maybe it was Monday, and I say that I want to record a video. So record video on how I manage my digital life. And that's the idea that I want to capture. So you can start to plan your day at a weekly level with this particular note, the week ahead, and you can set your deadlines and stuff just to remind yourself what's important or what's coming up. Now, what's really cool, what I did here is these will automatically get put on the journal note for that day at the bottom as a reference. So again, we're playing like we're in the past. This is Monday, this last Monday. And I've already put this task here. And so now we're fast forwarding and it's Friday again. And I'm going to go to my journal entry and see if I can find this particular entry. So if I go to journals and I scroll down, there is the note that are the tasks that I had set myself today. So this is a way that you can kind of automatically remind yourself or migrate tasks. So what I would typically do here as I'm planning my day is I am already immediately reminded of what's most relevant of the weekly note, because I put this task here. And what I'll do is I'll cut this and I'll move it to a time block in my time blocker. And that actually removes it from here. So that completely eliminates the duplication. The dry, it allows you to practice the dry principle inside your own time blocker and your own journal. So now it's still linked here because the tag for the day is on Friday, but that opens up the note and I can actually just click back to the weekly plan and find whether our tasks are there. But that is how I use the week ahead to start to stage my work, so that way I don't have to plan out, I don't have to create future notes and stage them in the note because I don't know what my schedule will look like yet, but I do know what tasks that I need to get done or intend to get done on that day, and that's where I use the week ahead. So that's the time blocking aspect of it in its entirety from a weekly plan and the journal level. The last thing that I want to share with you on this particular note and how I'm using this is an idea that I took from the bullet journal. So Writer Carroll, he was the creator of the bullet journal, and there's this concept of collections. And that's one thing that I really struggled to kind of get my head around in Obsidian, or even manually maintaining in the bullet journal is something that always fell away, which is like a reading list or a read later. So a lot of times you'll stumble upon a really great article or something like that that you just don't have time for, and you want to keep track of it somewhere. So an example for me, there was this study that I had found that had been mentioned in a meeting that I was in. It was how people read online. And it was an interesting article, and the article's about by using sensors and tracking people's eye movements, like figuring out how and where they fixate on words and how they read. And that's kind of the famous F shape, where people skim and read online with an F-shaped pattern. They don't, line by line go through things. And so, it's relevant to the research that I'm doing in my work, and I'm just generally curious about it, but I don't know where to put it, and I don't know. I basically just want to capture it and move on and review it later. So how people read online was the name of the article, and how I've started to use the idea of collections in the bullet journal is using tags. So I create this read later tag, so that way I can immediately go with this. So each tag in Logseq creates its own page. So if I click read later, it brings me this page, but then linked as references are all the different notes that have that tag in it, and it helps me to build this dynamic list. Another great thing is I can just click this little filter here and filter more. So if I wanted to get more specific, I could tag this with something like that. Like maybe it's relevant to me because it will help my writing. So I would put another tag of writing. So then I can review that. So it now shows up under writing and read later. But if I'm under read later, I can filter this by writing and only get those. So that's a way to filter it. I've done something similar with tutorials for Go, where I'll tag it with Golang, and then I'll also tag it with kind of the concept. If maybe it's learning about a struct or learning about different variable properties and stuff like that. So that way I can find my way back to it a little bit easier and scan it. So that's how I've been using tags as collections, I would say, is the gist of it. The final thing that I'll mention is how I'm managing meeting notes. So say in here I have a team meeting again at 2:30 p.m. A lot of times there's stuff that you want to talk about in the future. So just this happened to me today. I wanted to remind myself to bring up something to the team next week, because it's not important that I send out an email right now. I should just bring it up as open forum. So what I do is I have individual notes pages for these reoccurring meetings that I have. And then what I'll do is I'll pick the date. So maybe if I use the date picker, my weekly team meeting is on Tuesdays at 2:30. And here I can add it to discuss changes to the metadata, something to that effect, to the meta. So now when that day comes around, I'm going to have a reference underneath, March 29th, to remind myself the metadata, to see what that looks like and how you can see that it links both the day and the meeting note. We'll just change this to today, and that way it will pull up just like the week ahead note did. So if we do date picker, pick today, and we go back to our journal, we'll see now that team meeting has a reference to today, and then it also has this checkbox that I could then move, up to here as a bullet or something like that, to look at those. So that's a way that I keep track of meeting notes. And that pretty much wraps up the video. This is in its entirety how I've been using Logseq to manage my digital life. There are a few other things that I use with the collections, like bookmark lists and stuff like that, but you get the general idea with what I've already covered here. With that, I hope this is useful and that you've enjoyed watching it. If you do something different or have any questions, please let me know in the comments.